Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back to the Be Unbound podcast. I am your host, David Rethemeyer, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Abraham Chen. How you doing, Abe?
Doing very well. We are, again, excited for today's episode, but today we are talking with our musicians. So, David, you dabble in music, right? A little bit?
A little bit here and there.
Yes. So, today we have many different musicians from all over our community, all over the different generations. And we are just sitting down and talking about the writing process, the producing, performing, all these different aspects. So if you are a Sense student, or if you're just someone who is interested in this process, interested in getting a bit more into music production or writing all these things, I think you'll have a really fun time today.
Absolutely. Yeah, these guys are phenomenally talented, so we hope that you guys enjoy the episode.
Hello, welcome on to the episode. So excited to have all you guys on. Guys, we're talking music today, and I can't wait to dive into this. We have an extremely cool and diverse lineup for all over Unbound. And just different forms of music, different genres, really, and different generations, too. So let's start off with Donnie, who is, you're basically ancient one at this point, with how long you've been around the community.
Definitely oldest generation.
Yes. So my man Donnie, he is the Unbound legacy guy. You might know him as that. But he is one of the few people who've been to basically every single Apex that I know of, right?
I think I've made it to all of them.
Yes.
So far.
Yeah. He is a guitar player, amazing musician, and I'll let him talk about what he does in a second. We got my man JLoyd, Josiah. He is a rapper. If you've been around Apex, you know this man. He does some incredible stuff. Matthew, Rocke. You know him as literally the man of 1,000 names and 1,000 faces, all right? He's been around as well. He sings with his brothers in a group called the Rocke Brothers, and some amazing a cappella stuff or group stuff. And then last but definitely not least, we have Michael Plunk himself. If you've been around also Apex, you've seen this guy with a camera. He was helping out his media team last year, but he makes some bangers. This guy produces music, growing his music base. Very excited to see what you do, bro. So again, let's start with Donnie. Tell us about what you do, a little bit about the music that you like play and whatnot, and what you teach, all those things.
Sure, thanks. So I teach guitar. I've been playing guitar for about 15 years, and my initial interest in guitar started off with old 70s and 80s rock, primarily, mostly 80s hair metal, which was kind of the interesting thing. It's really funny because I go and I watch the videos, and I listen for the longest time. I went and I listened to the music on Spotify or on originally my cousin burned a DVD for me when I was 9 or 8 at the time, because I got my first guitar when I turned 9, and it was like he burned a CD, I guess it was, and I went and I listened to it for forever, and it wasn't hair metal yet, but it was the old 70s REO, Speedwagon. We had Aerosmith, we had a couple other guys and that were on that CD, and I listened to it, and eventually got me kind of interested in music, and I got a guitar, and then I went and I listened to a bunch of this 80s metal and stuff like that, and rock and that sort of thing. And then 5 years later was the first time I ever saw one of the music videos. I'm like, dude, how did he where's that there's a reason they call it hair metal. Mm-hmm. I was pretty impressed with that, so obviously I haven't taken after that, but I like the music. So I got inspired with all of the that old style of music, and it kind of pulled me into a bunch of other stuff. Eventually I got into playing jazz guitar, and so I played with the jazz band for about 6 years, and then a couple of years after that, I had already been playing guitar for about 10 years, and I decided to start teaching lessons. And so I've been doing that for about the last 5 or 6 years, working with students in various genres, including jazz, classical, blues, a little bit country guitar, rock, obviously, and a couple different things in that area. So, yep, that's what I do, and I really enjoy working with people.
There you go. I mean, you did just say you got a haircut for this podcast, so a little disappointed, bro. Come on, Yeah.
I'll bring my wig from what was that 2019 Apex? I think it's out there in the garage, but I'm pretty sure there's something living in it.
So yeah, insert pictures here, Marco. But
yeah, audio podcast.
Josiah, tell us about what you do.
Yeah, so most people know me as the rapper. I rap. I also sing. And outside of that, you don't normally see this, but if you're on my Facebook, you might see it. I also do professional theater. But
yes, sir.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. But rap is kind of like the big thing. And the way that I kind of got into rap R&B was kind of interesting because before 12 years old, I did not listen to music. Like, no joke. I just didn't listen to music. All I did was just play video games. Until one day my sister was like, listen, this is called an MP3 player. And I was like, what? That's amazing. So I got the MP3 player and she introduced me to Tadashi and Tripoli. So if anyone's familiar with the Christian rap guys, those are two definitely big guys, really OGs. And so I heard that. I think it was Tadashi's Riot. And I was like, oh man, this is amazing. This is good music. And so kind of just fast forwarding a little bit, I heard it. I enjoyed it. I liked it. But really what got me into rapping myself was there was actually a kid at my church who beatboxed. And I thought beatboxing was the coolest thing ever. And I wanted to beatbox so badly. I tried. I wasn't that great. But I kind of threw myself into it more. And that's another little secret fact is I really am good at beatboxing. I love beatboxing. But that's what got me into kind of the rap. Went to a talent show. Friend of mine said, I'm going to rap. Can you beatbox for me? I said, sure. And I beatboxed for him. I looked at him. I said, I want to rap too. So after that day, I said, you know what? Let me try writing some verses down. I'll tell you, they were terrible. I mean, I still have them in a box somewhere. Terrible. I mean, gosh, it was not good. But I got into it. And over the years kind of developed and honed that craft. And I'm at the point now where I've put out 2 albums, actually a third album, a singles album, and recently featured on a song with Brian G called Power Cypher. You can find it on Spotify. And it's something I love doing. I love hip hop and I love R&B. It's something I really enjoy doing and I want to continue doing it as long as I can. So.
Yes. Music and a lot of the links again we'll have a section where you guys can shout out what you guys are working on. We're definitely doing that, but all that will be in the show notes below. If you're listening or if you're watching this, check out the description. Hey, I want to say I can very much second he is a really good beatboxer. Okay, it's good. And hey, I also just the generational thing, it's hilarious. So we started with Donnie. You mentioned like CDs as a kid. Now we got MP3s. I mean, it's just different things. But all right, Matt, tell us about singing. So again, very different genre, but really cool stuff as well.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of actually before my brothers and I started singing as a quartet, I grew up singing with my family. So I've got 10 siblings. I'm on the bottom end of that, though. So all my older siblings and parents were singing in church well before I was born. And when I was way too little to sing, they were doing it. And then our family did a number of like local church and community events for a number of years. And that's kind of where my brothers and I got together and we were like, hey, let's do some quartet stuff because we grew up on Southern gospel music. And even though we were in Wisconsin, which is not the place for Southern gospel, but somehow we managed to find it. So, but yeah, so we started doing some Southern gospel stuff and then also branched into barbershop a cappella as well. And about 2014, we started doing more stuff as a quartet and have kind of done it ever since. So I enjoy the singing. All of us play instruments, but we never have done it really in any of our concerts. It's pretty much just vocal stuff that we do with background tracks or whatever. And then I've also dabbled in writing a little bit too, here and there, more Southern gospel style writing, but I've also done a little bit of country type of stuff too. So,
yeah. I will say too, Matt, like you are definitely the guy who shows me the most good country. And I mean, we'll have the whole debate. I'm saying this on record that I do listen to some country now. Some like thanks to Matt. So, hey, like growth and maturity and all those things. Anyways, Michael, tell us about what you do. And again, I just want to say, very excited for what you are doing now. Some fire beats, okay? And just if you've been to Apex, especially last year, you've heard stuff blasting on the speakers. So yeah, tell us about what you do.
Yeah, so my music has changed over the years. I started out as a kid listening to cassette tapes. Cassettes. You have everyone beat there.
He beat me.
Old cassette tapes. Still have a VHS player. And right now I'm mainly work in the electronic space. I've had the privilege of starting at the bottom. As you can see, people who can't see because you're listening, I have guitars across my back wall in my shot, and I have many more that are off camera. But yeah, I started off mainly just as a musician, just playing in worship bands for churches. From there, I branched out into writing and producing. That's mainly where I stick right now. I get contracted out by musicians and labels to write and record for different artists. The most recent project that I just worked on was a remix with Elenium, Swaco, and Trippie Redd, which released and got 170,000 streams. And it was like, that was my first foray into like this new style of music that I wasn't really comfortable with, because I was for so long, acoustic guitar playing, just chilling with the homies. And now I'm producing songs on electronic instruments and things of that nature. So it's been a journey, it's been a process, and it's a lot about experimenting and just using it as an outlet.
100%. So on producing, let's stay on that for a minute and let's talk about the process of producing and all that. What is it like for you, Michael? And I want to hear from the rest of you guys too, but what is a favorite aspect of producing or creating for you?
Absolutely. I think my favorite thing when it comes to producing is the fact that I will get on Zoom calls with people from all across the country, all across the world. And with Zoom and the technology that we have now as producers, I can come up with a song on my laptop, from an airport lounge, from my living room, from anywhere. And with literally just a physical laptop, I can put something together and in real time work with someone over all the way in San Francisco and create this musical artistic piece that's never been heard before. And just boop, there you go, demo is finished and done. And in like the music space, that's never been a thing. For the longest time, if you wanted to work with someone, you had to go to a studio with someone, you had to fly there, you had to go to England. But now we can do it all on our laptops. So that's my favorite part about producing, is collaborating with anyone wherever.
Yeah. And I will say that it's been an interesting couple of years for everyone. Let's just say that, right? With 2020, and I mean, we're in 2022 now, but for better, for worse, yeah, everything really has just been kicked 5 years into the future or more. And technology is different. How things work is different now. Like working remotely is such a thing. So I do think that's fascinating. And hopefully we'll touch on that a little bit more later on. JLoyd, how about for you? You've been in the producing space as well. What is it like for you? What are some of the favorite parts with especially writing music and all that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, the aspect that I like the most is it's kind of a storybook or a scrapbook of my life, I guess I could say, because like music itself, once you've made that creation, it can outlive you. Frank Sinatra, he has music, but he's dead and gone. But his music outlives him. And so when you put that piece of work together, you can pass it on to future people to listen to it. But then for me personally, just looking back for my style of music anyway, because a lot of mine is elements of my faith or elements of stories of people that I know, being that I've got friends in the inner city, and the struggles that they've gone through and kind of writing about that. For me, for the more personal songs, for me, I can see where my head was at mentally 2 years ago when I wrote that song compared to where my head is at now. And kind of sometimes I'll just stick a CD in and listen to it and go, wow, I remember what was going on when I made that song way back in the day, and how much I've grown. So for me, that's like the most rewarding aspect of the creation process.
That is so cool. Very much see that like from a story perspective, how you can weave story into like what you're doing. And that's just so cool. It's not just, there's obvious merit and skill in telling stories, but when it's music, there's so many different layers to that. So Donnie, you teach, and besides playing and all that, what has been the favorite part for you being a musician?
I work with a lot of students who have different goals. Some students are like I mentioned, I've sampled a lot of different styles of music, and so I have students who do that as well. And so it's always interesting to kind of watch them go along their journey. Most of the time, when I talk with somebody, they're like, "Yeah, this is kind of like the people who I like to listen to," and they'll have a few people, but they really start to branch out once they get a little more access to the instrument, and they start to really understand the process of being a musician. So the thing is that what I always try to tell people is that it's not about like in 3 months you'll be at this point, right? A lot of us have gotten on YouTube or whatever and seen like those 1 year progress videos, and this person goes from like, oh yeah, how do I tune a guitar, to like virtuoso in like a year or even less time than that. And so I've had people send those things to me before, and then they're like, oh yeah, how do I do this? And I'm like, well, let's go through the process, but realize that what you're doing is it's all based on understanding the process of learning. And once you understand the process of learning, you can build from there. So I don't know if I'm answering the question or not, but essentially the way that I enjoy working with people is I like helping them along that pathway of learning the day in and day out thing as far as being a musician goes. It's just like if you're a personal trainer, you teach them to get in the habit of just getting to the gym. And then once they're there, they'll start doing stuff. It's a matter of getting them there in the first place that matters. And so that's what we're doing is we're getting people into the gym, and then we're helping them to move forward and do all that stuff. But it's kind of like what you guys were saying as well. Recently, I've been experimenting with a lot of the online software that's available to us now, where we can actually record stuff, upload it, and have students record over it. So that's one space that I'm also trying to work it with my students, is actually getting them to start recording their own stuff, uploading it to the cloud, and letting other musicians play with it, because there's lots of options in there. And actually, I'd be interested to hear from you guys about how you've been doing that online collaboration.
There you go. Yes, we'll definitely touch on that. But Matt, I want to connect with you on, we've had all the different aspects of this. For you, what is it about writing, singing, or even performing that you like the most, that you connect with?
Yeah, for sure. I kind of relate to JLoyd in some ways with this in the story element. So writing, a lot of the writing I did was all story and song. And I loved that picture that you can paint for your listeners with that. But I'm also somebody who loves the sad. I love sad country songs. So I love writing sad music too. One of my goals when I was younger was writing songs that would make my mom cry, which I was successful a few times. So
what a goal.
Maybe not the highest goal, but
I need to hear this.
It was make Donnie
it honestly
cry.
is though, But no, just there's something that's really touching, if you can paint a really good story for someone that really hits heartstrings. That's really cool. But I think one of the things that I enjoy the most is with all the concerts I do with my brothers. I generally am the one who does all the concert orders and stuff like that. And the way I structure all of our concerts and programs, I try to do it in a way that brings one overarching story throughout our entire concert. And so that can be kind of a challenge in some ways, but in other ways, it's a lot of fun. And I've really enjoyed that process. So
yeah, let's talk about that for a bit. So performing, I think, is just another really fascinating aspect. And all of you guys here as musicians have performed to some degree. So Matt, let's start with you, but is there a certain thought process or, I don't know, something that helps you prepare for performances or that mindset? I used to play classical myself. I was a classical pianist, was trained for a while and did the whole like recitals, and it's very different, extremely different, but there is like a certain mindset of like, okay, game mode, and then you go on, you do your thing. What about for you, especially since you're singing quartet with your brothers, all that? What is it like?
Yeah, so singing with my brothers, one thing that we've learned collectively is if we're in disagreement with each other, our concerts never go well. And so it's an important thing that we're kind of all on the same page, and we know what's going on and stuff. and we clear up anything that we've been trying to figure out or disagreeing on before we get into a concert. Because that can definitely throw us off. But I think beyond that too, just personally, the going into concerts, when we first started doing it 8 years ago, that was the scariest thing possible. I would get knots in my stomach, couldn't stand up, it was terrible, but I've gotten over that definitely. And I think being in radio for 4 years also helped that too. But kind of the mindset going into it that I've learned is that it's essential is why you're doing it. Because when I go into a concert and I'm trying to be really impressive and I'm trying to impress people who are there, I never do as well as when I go into it with a mindset of, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to put it all on the table for the Lord and for the people listening. But I'm not going to try to be something that I'm not. And I think sometimes in performance, that can kind of be the way that people tend to slide, is trying to put this amazing face on, which isn't necessarily reality or who they are off stage. And that can definitely hurt more than help the overall performance.
Yeah, seriously. How about the rest of you guys? I mean, with performing, is there something that you guys tap into, or how do you guys prep for that?
Well, JLoyd has brought down the house at a couple apexes, so I think I'd like to hear from him.
It's funny because a lot of the stuff that I've gotten was from my experience doing theater. I have a really great teacher. She's a vocal teacher, Judith Ranaletta. She's like a grandma to me. She has a lot of experience. She worked in Italian opera back in the day, and now she teaches students with the Rocke City Singers. It's a regional show choir. If you ever want to see more about them, they're on a show called Gleeful. They were on a show. They were featured on there. And I had the privilege of being in that group for several years as a co-president. And we did, if anyone's familiar with Hamilton, we did a Hamilton medley. And so we went around the area, around the region, performing this medley at different places, different events. Yeah, and one of the things she taught me was, she said, when we go on stage, sometimes you feel those nerves, but you can channel those nerves in such a way where pick one person in the audience and perform for that person, especially if we're doing something emotional. If we were doing a song in Hamilton, the part of this, the song where it says death doesn't discriminate between the sinners and the saints, it takes and it takes, but we keep living anyway. Delivering those lines and singing it and looking at the audience, you choose one person, and kind of the goal is make them cry and inspire them, make them laugh. And look them right in the eye and like you're having a conversation with them and perform that way. And also, if it's a more energetic performance, just make everyone feel like they're having a good time, just make it hype, make everyone else hype, but, to enjoy that. But really it's just choosing that one person and performing to that one person is one thing that I really took away from my teacher, Judith. That was a really good lesson. I think even when it comes to like life. Giving a conversation, if you're doing public speaking at an event anywhere, just choose that one person. It really brings the pressure down and those nerves, and you realize I'm just focusing on one. That trickle effect affects everyone, and next thing you know, everyone feels it the same way.
That's such a good point, and especially the whole you're doing it for one, and what Matt you were saying, the impressing people thing. Eventually, if you know Christ, you're doing it for God, right? And so that's very much a huge point. On the performing note, let me just ask this. Any interesting stories that stick or moments that have stuck in your mind? It could be good. It could be bad. I don't know. I'll let you guys decide over the years with all the performances.
Yeah. So one example that comes to mind, not necessarily the greatest example, but one of those lessons you learn when we first started singing as a quartet. What we would generally have is we would have somebody else be running all the sound, and we would just have like our iPad or whatever up on stage where we were starting our tracks and whatever. And we were just doing this short performance one time at this place, and our family was there. We were sitting right in the middle of this song. It was a song that started relatively quiet, but then the soundtrack built quite a bit. And so we're up there singing, and we're in the middle of the song, and our family, they're off to kind of the side. And there was a couple people in my family who started trying to motion to us like the soundtrack was too loud, so to turn it down. And so I was just going to leave it because I'm like, you know what, we're not going to mess with this. But one of my brothers decided, he could try to get the track down. And so he started messing with the iPad without looking at it, and he skipped to the next track. And so we were right in the middle of this phrase, and all of a sudden the track ends and this new track starts, and we're all just kind of looking at each other like, now what do we do? And that memory is permanently ingrained in my mind. So
just keep singing. Just keep singing.
Hey, yes, those are the stories. Again, that's why I'm asking that stick to us. So lessons learned. Any from you, Josiah?
I think one in particular that came to mind when you asked that question was we had a performance one time, and this kind of goes along with our Hamilton medley that we performed, and I would do Aaron Burr's part, and we're rapping, we're having a good time. And during the performance, Hamilton and Burr get real close, and we start using our hands. We're going to rise up and take our shot. And during that performance, I put my hands up to say rise up, and I punched Hamilton's hand with the microphone. And I watched, and I can remember in slow motion almost, the microphone flying out of his hand and just rolling in a beautiful just pirouette as it landed on the ground, and thunk, thunk, thunk. And you could hear in the speakers loud. And he gave me a look for a second, and then we just kept going, and the audience kind of cringed. And I think one of the audience members picked up the microphone and feebly tried to walk back up on stage and hand it to us. And we just finished strong. And, those are the moments that, you finish and you go, oh my gosh. Did that actually just happen? Everything just goes in slow motion. Somehow in the end, it all works out, but it doesn't feel good in the moment. So I think that was a big one for me. That's for sure.
And yes, stories. David, I don't know about you. I know you've played music as well, but I very much relate to these mishaps. Have you had any crazy stories yourself where things went wrong on stage?
Oh, goodness. None that I can think of when I was performing. Typically, my biggest role in music production these days is that I'm the sound guy. And so I can think of several times where I have not unmuted or potentially muted microphones at the wrong time or had to deal with feedback. So pretty much any time that you are in any sort of performing arts or like stage production, you're going to have some fun mishaps. So I appreciated these stories a lot.
That is almost worse because if you're in the audio booth, everyone turns around and looks at you. Right?
It feels like it, at least. It does.
There's that response. If you're on stage, whatever, people keep going. With the audio, and as you know, I do behind the scenes in AV a lot as well. Yes, that is very much a thing. But hey, that is the process of learning from failure. We've heard a lot about that on the episode today, and we will have a part 2. Everyone didn't get to give their full shout outs at the end, but if you want to learn more about everyone's music, find their social media, it will be linked in the show notes below. Do check that out. They have a lot of cool stuff, and again, as I'm sure you've heard, very talented artists, so definitely do that. Hey, learning from failure and all that. David, that's one of the things we talk a lot about at Unbound. And one of the things that we, in a kind of way, emphasize with the Ascend program. This is our college program where what we do is not just take classes, take music theory, whatever, but we want to send young people out into the real world to do projects, to learn through experience and through failure. Tell us a bit about this program.
Yeah, so basically Ascend is our higher education program where we encourage students to not just look to earn college level degrees for the sake of earning college level degrees, but also we stress preparing for life and giving them real world skills and resume worthy experience that they actually use to do things that are relevant to them in the real world. So if you want to find out more about our program Ascend or any of our programs for high school students as well, you can visit our website. Our website is beunbound.us. That is beunbound.us. So Thank you guys so much for joining us on this episode. Like we mentioned, this is part 1. Part 2 will be coming up next week. So if it's not already up, make sure to stay tuned for when that comes out. And as always, be unbound.